guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my review of BMW's most powerful M car ever, their £141,000 M5 CS. My love for the F90 M5 is no secret. When the base model M5 came out in 2018, I instantly clicked with that car, and less than 12 months later, well, the M5 competition came out, and most of you know what I think about that car. It still ranks as one of my top 5 favourite ever cars. It is literally all of the car that anyone could ever wish for. Practicality, blistering performance, and yet it still flies under the radar when you want it to, providing you haven't got it in a leery individual colour, of course. When I heard rumours of BMW developing this M5 CS, I really didn't think that it was going to come to fruition. In a world where the C63 is becoming a four-pot and manufacturers are being forced into focusing on hybrids and EVs, I just didn't think this was going to make it to production, especially as BMW already have the quite ridiculous M5 competition. This car shares the familiar 4.4 litre V8 twin turbo, but it produces 635 horsepower and 750 newton meters of torque, which is the same torque figure that the M5 competition has, although that maximum torque figure is available over a broader band. So essentially, it has an extra 10 horsepower over the M5 competition and costs an extra £40,000. At this point, it really doesn't make much sense. The more impressive figures are in its weight saving. BMW have managed to save 70 kilos compared to the M5 competition. That's the weight of an average male human being, and it means that this M5 CS tops the scales at 1,825 kilos, which is a lot of weight, but that makes it a lightweight in this particular segment. In fact, that makes it 1/4 of a tonne lighter than Audi's current RS6, and only 100 kilos heavier than my M3 competition. Yet this car houses BMW's M xDrive system and has that 4.4 litre V8 up front. It's truly remarkable how they've managed to get rid of so much weight. To achieve that weight saving, well, BMW have fitted the M5 CS as standard with their carbon ceramic brake package. They've also fitted these rather gorgeous, ultra lightweight forged and gold 20-inch alloy wheels. The carbon roof, well, that's standard on the M5 competition, but this one has a carbon bonnet and it is absolutely stunning, especially in the flesh. And when you lift it up, you can see a lovely M5 CS engraved in the bottom of it. They've also removed a lot of the soundproofing, and when you jump inside, which we will do in a second, you'll see where a lot more of that weight savings come from. Before we jump inside, I'd like to thank BOTB.com for sponsoring this video. BOTB have been changing people's lives for the past 20 years with their dream car competition, giving you the chance to win your dream car with a massive £50,000 worth of cash in the boot. As a very special treat, BOTB have actually added an M5 CS to their lineup of available cars on their website. So if you want to win this car, make sure you get online and play today. The M5 CS will be removed from their lineup on Sunday, the 20th of June, 2021. But if this doesn't take your fancy, they have 150 other cars to choose from, with tickets starting from just £1.60. Please use the link below in the description or the pinned comment. Good luck. For those of you wondering about this beautiful location, well, I'm in the south of Wales and that house behind me is Penpont. I'll put a link to the house in the description below, so make sure you check it out. Jumping in here, well, you start to see where the rest of your weight saving has gone and where the rest of your cash has gone. There's enough CS badging around the cabin to let you know that you're in something special. There's lovely contrasting stitching and Alcantara headlining everywhere. These seats, yes, they do look very familiar. They're the same optional carbon buckets that are available on the new M3 and M4. The same seats that I have in my car, in fact. And I absolutely love them. They add a lot to this cabin and they make the car seem and feel really special. Other things to talk about, well, the steering wheel. They've removed some of that excess and unnecessary padding and it actually feels pretty good. They've also covered it in Alcantara, and behind it, well, they've added the carbon fibre paddles from the new M3 and M4. And those alone just add so much to this cabin. It's so nice. My view looking forward over that beautiful carbon fibre bonnet, this Alcantara steering wheel, and these lovely paddles, it really does feel a step above the M5 competition. Stuff I'm not too keen on, well, they've removed this storage bin here. I'm assuming to save a few grams of weight, but in the M5, is that really necessary? In the 24 hours that I've already had this car, I have missed having some storage down there because you're just used to having it. But it's not like you can't work around it. You've got big storage bins in the doors and a fairly big glove box and a little storage compartment here just behind the cup holders where the wireless charging bay is. But for the first time ever, you're probably more interested in the back seats than the ones in the front. So let's jump back there now. Jumping back here, well, it feels every bit as special as the seats in the front. These are so supportive and very comfortable. And in fact, I feel like I've actually got a bit more legroom compared to a normal M5 or M5 competition. And that's because these carbon buckets are a lot thinner than the glorious seats that come in those cars. I also have 4-zone climate control, a couple of USB-C chargers. So I'm not left for wanting more back here. The vents in the B-pillars remain, and I've got a couple of vents down there. So it does seem strange that they have removed that storage bin in the front when they've kept everything like the 4-zone climate. That driver's seat is in my position, so you could easily sit 4 tall adults in this car. And when you're back here, you've got loads of legroom, loads of headroom. It just feels really, really nice, and I could spend a lot of time back here, and I wouldn't be worried if my driver was a spirited driver because I'll be very supportive and very comfortable sitting back here. The mighty M5 has been around for 37 years now, and this very latest F90 M5 CS could be the last of a combustion engine only M5. The way things are going, I can see the next generation being a hybrid, if not a full electric vehicle. So is this the very best M5 we've ever seen? Similar to the M2 CS, the M5 CS has a massive price premium over the competition. In fact, this costs about £38,000 more than an M5 competition. But just like the M2 CS, it does add up to the sum of its parts. So when you start looking at what is standard on this car, and some things you can't get at all. So we've got the carbon ceramic brake package, we've got these amazing lightweight wheels, we've got the carbon fibre bonnet, which is an absolute piece of art. And then you get on the inside of the car where you just can't opt for these in your M5 competition. I'm sure you'll be able to find some in a scrapped M3 or M4 very soon that you could bolt into the front seats, but those rear seats, you can't get them for love nor money. So this car is very unique and it is very special. And although at £140,000 that's a lot of money, this is a lot of car. Let's talk about this driving position. Well, in a regular M5 it's very good, and in this it's actually slightly better because these seats allow you to sit a little bit lower in the car. I'm not sitting as low as I can in my M3 competition because I think the floor is actually a lot lower itself. So even though the seats are identical, their bolting points or their mounting points are slightly higher. But it's a perfect seating position for me because if I was any lower, I'd struggle to see over the bulge of that beautiful carbon bonnet. In terms of the steering wheel, well, we've already talked about the fact it's Alcantara and it definitely feels a little bit thinner than the one in the M5 competition. This car definitely seems to have a little bit more steering feel as well. It's really, really nice, and I love these carbon paddles. They work so well in the M3 and M4, and of course they're going to work very well in this car. It shares the same ZF 8-speed gearbox, and arguably that gearbox suits this bigger car a bit better. Oh, this car is just incredible. Torque, just so much torque. We know it has 635 horsepower, 750 newton meters of torque, and we know it only weighs 1,825 kilos. How fast is this thing? Well, yesterday I got my race box out because it was meant to rain today, so I thought I'd do it in the dry, and I timed it. So let's cut to that, and I'll join you back here in a couple of minutes. Let's test out this car's acceleration figures. BMW claim it will do the 0 to 62 sprint in 3 seconds flat. My race box is ready, conditions outside are close to perfect. I've got all of the traction control devices switched off. My left foot is hard down the brake, right foot on the accelerator, launch control active, here we go. 2.75 seconds. Oh, I've got a bit lightheaded. That is the fastest I've ever recorded any car to 60 miles an hour. That's ridiculous. Absolutely unbelievable, I'm sure you'll agree. Something this large and this comfortable and practical doing the 0 to 60 sprint in 2.75 seconds. What has the world come to? And it also goes on to a top speed, a limited top speed of 189 miles an hour. And I'm in no doubt without that limiter, this car would smash through the 200 mile an hour mark. It's just ballistically fast, it really is. Now, we've talked about its crazy acceleration figures, but what's this car like when you get to the twisty bits? After all, it is lighter, it's supposedly more focused. It sits about 7 millimeters lower than a competition, and they've tweaked with the dampers and the spring rates. And actually, while we're talking about that, its ride quality is slightly better than an M5 competition. And that's sitting in these rather firm carbon buckets. So if I was sitting in a regular M5 seat with this ride quality, well, it would feel very good, and in fact much similar to a base F90 M5, and not the stiffer and slightly over rigid for the UK M5 competition. As with all M cars these days, I have the red M1 and M2 preset buttons on the steering wheel. And my preset M1, which is my road mode, well, I have the M xDrive system set up in 4-wheel drive sport, so it sends a lot more power and torque to the rear axle. I have the engine set up in Sport Plus, so I've got maximum throttle response because this has got so much traction. We're running on PS4S's, by the way, the star-marked BMW OEM ones, and not the P0 Corsas that these M5 CSs say they come with. And I'm glad about that, because although the Corsa is probably a slightly better high-performance dry summer tyre, the PS4S is certainly a better all-round high-performance tyre. And when you're in Wales, you never know what the weather's going to do, so it's always a good idea to have a good tyre and be prepared for all seasons in one day. I have the chassis set to comfort because that's stiff enough for any typical Welsh A or B road. I've got the steering in comfort because I feel it gives me more feel in comfort compared to sport where it's just overly heavy. And I've got all of the traction control aids switched off. This car only has on MDM or off, unlike the new M3 and M4 that have a 10-way traction control system, but everything off in this car on star-marked PS4Ss. Well, it's all the grip and handling you could ever wish for. Coming up to a really good section of road, so let's just talk you through what I'm feeling, because this car is just mighty. It's a 60 limit up here, and it feels like you could do 160 along here in this. It's just an incredible piece of kit. Something else that definitely inspires you with confidence in this car is its brakes, and not just how powerful they are, how stable the car is when you touch them. It's just so good. Now we're coming into a bit of a tight section here, a section that you'd really label as an M2 section of road and not an M5 section of road, but you can come piling in here. Oh, it's just brilliant. The way it exits corners, it's just unbelievable. And the M5 competition does do that too, but this car just has a bit more poise, a bit more balance. It just feels a bit lighter on its feet, which it is a little bit lighter on its feet. Just everything about it. I think it's the unsprung weight. It's the lighter wheels, it's the carbon ceramic brakes. Everything just feels a bit freer, and it really does feel as nimble and agile as my M2 competition, which is just bizarre in a car this big. Obviously, its restricting factors are the size of it. You know, it is still a 5 Series and a bit more with slightly wider arches and stuff. So this car is wide on the road. It does have a presence, and that's the only restricting thing on a really good A or B road. Before I get to my conclusion, I want to talk about the couple of negatives I've found in the time that I've had this car. The first one, well, we've already talked about it. It's the lack of storage bin here on the center console. And I know you're probably already sick of me banging on about that, but I just can't see the plus sides of getting rid of that. Surely they've only saved, what, 100 grams or something by getting rid of the lid, because it was just a hollow bin. So that's disappointing in a car like this that should still have its practicalities. The other slightly more serious negative, and something that I have to talk about with you guys because it happened and it annoyed me and I lost a lot of time this morning, is when I got to get in this car this morning and I fired it up, it came up with so many warnings. 4-wheel drive warning, rear differential warning, pedestrian safety warning, all of these warnings. Thankfully, because I left the car alone for so long and I tried the locking and unlocking thing, leaving it for 10 minutes, unlocking it, the last attempt I fired it up and everything worked, because I'd lost power steering, I'd lost loads of things. The car felt awful, it felt like there was no suspension, it really went into a real limp mode, there was no power or anything. And thankfully it all just came back after I tried to start it for about the 10th time. And unfortunately, in this day and age, that's the sort of thing that just can happen randomly to any car. And I've road tested probably 100 new BMWs over the past 3 or 4 years. And that was the first time I had a major issue with one. Yes, you get punctures and, you know, small electrical gremlins like you do with all modern cars, but that was the first time that I had something reasonably major happen where I almost couldn't shoot this video. Can you imagine? I'm up here next to this beautiful road in this amazing car and it wasn't working. I mean, it was frustrating for me and it would have been frustrating for you guys because I wouldn't have been able to finish the video. So let's come up with a conclusion. Is this car worth it? Is it worth £140,000? Well, just like with the M2 CS, the M3 CS and M4 CS, if you can afford one, then yes, it is worth it, because it's certainly more special than the M5 competition. And like we said earlier on in the video, you can definitely see where your money is going. It's a ridiculous car for people with ridiculous sized bank accounts, and it's great that BMW have the humour to continue building cars like this that we don't necessarily need, but we're so glad that we have. I mean, it's just silly, this car. really is. And when you compare it to cars like the RS e-tron GT that I had up in Scotland a couple of weeks ago, well, that car is only a couple of grand cheaper than this. It's as fast as this, up to about 40 miles an hour, and then it wouldn't see which way this car went. It doesn't handle anywhere near as good, and you feel completely removed from the dynamics of the car. It's miles less practical in terms of interior cabin space and boot space, and with the e-tron GT you get a realistic range of about 200 miles, and this car gives you 400 miles, and you can refill that, like I've done on this trip several times. You can refill it within 5 minutes and get on your way again. So the future is going electric, at least the initial future. And I know there's a lot of people banging on about how amazing electric cars are, and they do work in certain scenarios, but when you compare something like a top-of-the-range Taycan or the top-of-the-range RS e-tron GT to this car, I'm sorry, but they have nothing on this in any department. They really don't. This is the absolute business. And when you look at it like that, it really does start to make a lot of sense. So I'm really grateful and thankful to spend the few days that I have with this car up in beautiful Wales. And when these are gone, we're really, really going to miss them. And if this is the last M5 as we know it, with a combustion engine only, well, fair play BMW, you've built a very, very special car here. Once again, I want to say a massive thanks to BOTB for sponsoring this video. Without their help, I certainly wouldn't have been able to spend the past 2 days in this car up here in Wales producing what is hopefully a fairly good video. Please head over using the pinned comment below or the description to botb.com and see if you can win yourself a dream car, whether it's one of these or one of their other 150 odd cars in their lineup. Also, a big shout out and thanks to Penpont for letting me film the intro of this video outside their beautiful house and putting me up for the night. So cheers guys, you know who you are. And my final thanks goes to my good friend Jim, who lives up in Wales and helped me film a lot of the external moving shots that you've seen throughout this video. So big thanks, mate. Really, really appreciate it. I couldn't have done it without any of you guys. I'm going to enjoy the rest of this road and switch the cameras off. I'll see you at the next video very soon. Cheers. Okay guys, something a little bit different. I've got my good friend Josh next to me.
Hello.
And his little daughter Olive behind. So Olive's going to let us know if she thinks this car's fast. You ready, Olive? Here we go.